Good evening. What's going on today? Dr. Maraglia, can you hear me? I don't believe you can. Can anybody else hear me?
I can
Yeah, I
hear
can
you.
hear you.
Good, good, good. So always when I go back and forth out of Zoom, you never know what's going to happen. Well, welcome back, everybody. I see it's 7 o'clock. It's time to get started. If anybody else joins us, I'll let them in. Looks like we'll give Dr. Maraglia a minute. She's having problems with hers. Let me let me look at let me get back here. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Courtney, Raquel. Okay. And that. All right. All right. Dr. Maraglia, can you hear? You're muted. Can you hear us now? I don't know. Dr. Maraglia, she's still muted. Let's see. Let's see who we got here. We're getting everybody admitted here. All right. I'll go ahead and get started, Doc Maraglia. You're still muted. All right, so Courtney's still in the lead as our star of the week on our evidences, but Raquel he's in a close second now. So he's the man this week. He's moving right through. Everybody else is doing well, doing a great job. We'll let Dr. Maraglia talk about your discussion boards when she gets in with us tonight. She's not with us yet. Um, Let me share my screen. I have fixed. Um, uh-oh. Dr. Maraglia, I'll let you in again. You're still muted. There you
I
can
couldn't
you.
hear anything. I had to pull my phone up. I
All
couldn't
right,
hear
you're
anything.
good. All right, so it's time for you. All right, who's your stars of the week on the discussion board?
Well, actually, my star of the week, I am not doing discussion board. I'm doing something different.
Okay.
I just want to give a shout out to Tamika for getting so many of her artifacts in this week. I am really proud of her. I know she had a couple of questions about them, and she and I had a meeting, and she's just been rocking them in there. So that she's my star for this week.
Excellent, excellent, excellent,
Thank you.
excellent,
Thank you.
You are
excellent.
welcome because I know it was stressing you out a little bit, but you're doing great.
Great, 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 great. All right. Hopefully, let me share my screen. Hopefully, I have fixed a couple of things. I went back and reset them. All right. So I have put the inventory back in. Somebody said that it wasn't working, so I have put the inventory back in. And so there it is. I have fixed the TWC facilities. There it is. It didn't seem to be working. I have not looked at the discussion board because it's still got some that needs to be graded. And if I go in and work on it, I'll delete them. So if the discussion boards aren't working right, I'll fix them later tonight. Um, so
I
that I
I
don't.
did some grading just a few minutes ago.
All right. Did you find that some of the discussion boards are missing, like 15 and 16 or 13 and 14?
You
That
know
it
what?
doesn't show missing on my end.
I didn't look to actually see if they were there. I just went in and graded what folks had
Okay.
submitted.
All right. I'll check on those. If there are any mixing, I'll get them fixed. I'll just replace them all. All right. So before we get to facilities tonight, I want to look at case study 4. All right. And so case study 4 for next week is about a number of things. Now, I have put that inclusion versus mainstreaming PowerPoint when we talked about that. So everybody knows that inclusion is where we push the teachers into the rooms rather than pull the students out. And in the mainstreaming, you mainstream them kids in certain classes like electives, but you pull them out for their core. All right, so inclusion's about pushing in rather than pulling out. So when you push the help in. Now, this case is about a number of things that we've talked about this semester. There's some FERPA in this one. Parents complaining, can't talk about other people's kids. You only talk about theirs. This one speaks to instructional practices, serving exceptional children. So the gist of this one is that parents come in and complain that their kids who are average and above are being used to tutor the EC kids. Now, in nobody's world, let's be clear, in nobody's world is that a good instructional practice. Don't make that mistake. We're not talking about cooperative learning here. What we're talking about is using these kids to teach those kids basic stuff. Problem with that is those kids are just being warehoused. Your upper kids are just being warehoused. So don't get that part twisted and think, "Oh, that sounds like a good thing." It's not a good thing. That in nobody's world is that a good, effective, or a standard instructional practice. It's actually harmful to both kids, those giving and receiving. All right. That's the first thing to remember. That should not be an issue in your mind. That this is a bad thing. Second, there's got to be the issue of walkthroughs and evaluations. And when parents complained about how the teacher was teaching, the principal didn't know what she was doing or not doing. That's a problem. Instructional supervision. The next problem is instead of going and looking, she sent somebody else. Um, Again, that would be nonfeasance. You had a duty to act and didn't. In a civil case, you would lose that one. So there are a lot of things in here that might steer you wrong, but this is a lot of text. You need to read this thing and go over it carefully. Um, and then questions for your reflection are at the bottom. That's the things you need to answer. Um, and so this one has a lot of things that we've talked about before, the schedule, you know, how you do the inclusion model, how you do EC, FERPA, parents' rights. All of those things are embedded in pretty much everything that we've done. There's even some discipline and due process in here. And so everything that we have talked about this semester, again, this is a long one. The last one, the second one was a short one. This is a long one. But make sure you read all this carefully to make sure that you understand what you're being asked to do. How might the principal approach this in future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? Now, the teachers are arguing. There's some staff unrest. The teacher that's doing this, but you have to go on what's best practices and what's good for students. What path should you take? What's the collaboration with children might the principal and the teachers propose in order to improve the inclusive environment, encouraging appreciation of diversity? All right. So anyway, make sure that you note all the things that the principal did right or if she did any things wrong. Now, in this one, I can't see much that she did right. But you need to outline all the things that she needs to improve in her behavior. So there it is. It's pretty lengthy, but it kind of culminates everything we've done. Dr. Maragli, I know this one's near and dear to your heart. You have any comments you'd like to make?
Um, just because there is so much going on, trying to keep your eye on what the actual issue is. Don't let some of these things
Right.
distract you. That's one of the things that I always think about with this one is don't let those other things distract you. Think about what really is at the heart of this issue.
The heart of this issue is how you run an inclusion program. Is it okay to have some kids teach other kids and then themselves are not being taught? Is that okay? I mean that's the one particular teacher's idea of how to do the inclusion model. Now, the master schedule implications is they put all the EC kids in one room. Is that a good practice from what you've learned about scheduling? Should all the kids that need services be in one room? The whole idea of the inclusion model is not to group all the kids together to single them out. Then you just, even in the inclusion, you just gone back and done that when you put them all in the same room. Then
Is
you
that even legal?
exactly, and then you put the best kids in there with them so they could teach them. I mean, in what world is that a good model? Is that a legal model?
I know we got some EC folks in here. Is that legal?
To
I've
put
seen it
them,
done.
but if it's supposed to be in a sped setting, yes. But if it's not, if it's inclusion, then no.
No, this is not. That's what we're talking about. This is supposed to be an inclusion setting. So, I mean, what they've done is not even legal to start with. Not only is it unethical and bad practice, it's not even legal because this is an inclusion. So you've got to remember that. All right. Anybody have any questions, be sure to email me or Dr. Maragli about this one. It's pretty complex, but again, it's really pretty simple. There's a lot of stuff in here that can throw you off track. All right. So there it is.
I think they're going to do well with it. They've been really doing well with their case studies as we've been going along. So
Oh
I
yeah.
have really high expectations for you
Yep.
guys.
Yep. That you're gonna get this one. All right. All right, tonight we're going to talk about facilities. All right, so I want to start with this one. This is again, it's in your shell. Um, so always I kind of reverse engineering things, start with the end in mind. So the end in mind in facilities is the teacher working conditions survey about facilities and resources. Your teachers are asked about these things. So obviously, if we keep score on these things, they're important. So here are the things that you as a principal are going to be responsible for when teachers take the TWC. So let's look at this. All right. Teachers have sufficient access to appropriate instructional materials. What's the issue there? Somebody, anybody? All right, I'll go first since nobody else wants to volunteer. The first issue is coming to accommodation as a faculty of what appropriate materials are. Too many times we have teachers who say, well, if I had that, my kids would learn if I had that. And what you have to come to accommodation and kind of a collaborative setting in your building is what kind of instructional materials do we want to use in our building? What can we afford? If we can't afford them, how could we get them, or what could we do in place of them? And that doesn't mean that teachers still won't want that stuff or be mad, but hopefully that will help you at TWC time. Um, you know, one of the things that I see a lot now is, well, my kids don't have computers. Well, I don't know that they would learn any more just because they had a computer in their backpack or under their desk, or were using it as a paperweight. Um, and so the first thing you need to do is make sure that you come to some accommodation in your building about what the appropriate materials are. Now, um, a lot of that too is the copy machine, um, that kind of thing. Um, and and they're going to be asked about that. But so make sure when you're talking to teachers about what they need in terms of instructional materials, that it's not computers. Those are asked. It's not printers, phones, faxes, email, copy machines. Make sure that when you're talking about instructional, I mean, it's things that you use in instruction. It's not inanimate objects. It's instructional materials. It's books or media of some sort or a program or something of that nature. Make sure that you come to a collaborative accommodation with your teachers so they don't beat you up over those materials. Then you can see computers, technology, office equipment, copy machines. And so I want to stop, and I'm going to stop my share, and we're going to talk about copy machines for a minute.
And then I want to add something after that.
Copy machines are a pariah on, they are a pox on our house. Um, Copy machines make it easy to do worksheets,
Hmm.
paper and pencil assessments. They make being a lazy or poor teacher too easy. But that must be a cultural thing. You can't just walk in a building and say, I'm taking the copy machine out or I'm limiting your copies. It has to be, again, a collaborative conversation with your teachers about why do you need this? What could we do differently than that? Again, that's one of those things you're going to have to use your political savvy to get teachers where they're not just relying on copy paper as an instructional crutch. The same, the same as any other thing like that. Again, um, they can't just say, well, because my kids aren't learning or making growth because I don't have a computer or I didn't have enough copies. No, that's just poor quality teaching. So you got to kind of wean them off the copy machine, and that is that should be a priority for you when you get your principal job is making sure that the culture of your building is about teaching and learning, and that the copy machine in many ways is a detriment to that. Dr. Maraglia.
What I wanted to say about instructional materials is also think about your particular philosophy in your building. Um, what I mean by that, for example, is that my experience is I've got a lot of years with Montessori, and what we need in a Montessori school is going to look a little bit different than what you might need in a traditional setting. And so you need to make sure that you come to consensus on what is necessary within your specific, whatever your particular methodology is, um, or philosophy. But also within that, having worked in different Montessori settings, making sure that this goes back to the copy machine a little bit as well. I have been in a very pure traditional Montessori setting, as opposed to now it's a little bit of a mixed bag, despite the fact it says Montessori on our sign. And so you've got to make sure everybody's on the same page. Like right now, we're a little too much worried about our copy machine and having worksheets, when in Montessori we don't believe in worksheets. We don't want TVs in the classroom. We don't want a lot of computers in the classroom. So also keep that in mind when you're coming to consensus with your staff, when you're talking about how it's a cultural thing. What is your culture? What is your philosophy? What are your beliefs in terms of instruction? And is everybody on the same page with that? And are you really aligning what's in the classroom with what you say you believe and how you are providing instruction? So that's also another key component there as well.
In the 80s, I was principal in Burke County, Western County, and they had gone in the 70s to an open concept. They even built Freedom High School without any walls between the rooms. They just had big open spaces. I had a elementary that had a pod building where they just had big pods where there were three rooms in a pod. Um, and we were doing a lot of Montessori things. In the open concept, you do a lot of Montessori things where they wanted sand and water,
Mm-hmm.
um, and blocks and all those kinds of things. But then you had folks that wanted the traditional stuff, and so you had to come to accommodation. Is what is our culture? What is our philosophy here? And make sure that your resources support that. We didn't let teachers make copies in that building. Because again, worksheets are not part of Montessori or the open system. And a lot of them, you would have thought you cut their water and air off when you took the copy machine away. But you have to come to an accommodation on those kinds of things. You don't want to get beat up on your TWC every time that it goes out over things that you don't want in your building. And if you just can't get them, that's one thing. But if you don't want them, then you shouldn't be getting beat up with them all the time. Um, and so, again, critical conversations you have to have with your faculty about why do you need this? What are we going to use this for? All right. Broad range of professional support personnel. Again, if you have any local control over how you use your teacher assistants, generally they're allotted, only in the lower grades, and your district may support them in 3-5 and may not. Now, one of the things that I would caution you about is if your allotment is in K2 and the state's paid for them, you can't move them around. You need to be careful. Again, that's about your master schedule. Dr. Maraglia, you want to speak to that? You're a little more current on that than I am.
Well, I'm a little bit different too because with Montessori, we usually have an assistant in every classroom.
Right,
It doesn't matter the grade. But yes, in an elementary building, if your personnel are funded for that particular grade span, that's where you've got to keep them.
right,
And that causes other issues, or it can cause other issues among your staff because your upper grade teachers are going to start feeling like they don't have the support, and there might be some jealousy and some hard feelings there about that. And trying to talk openly and transparently with your staff so that they can need to be aware of some of these funding rules and regulations. That was something when I first became a principal, there were a lot of different rules and policies that changed that year, which was I was so thrilled of because my teachers kept throwing at me, well, we used to be able to do it this way. Well, we can't do it that way anymore because then legally we're going to get into some issues about that. And so just having some open conversations and collaborative conversations. And again, you're not letting your folks make the decisions for you, but letting them have a voice and them feeling like they have some input in it so they have some better understanding of the parameters you have that you're working within, with the decisions you have to make with staffing and other things that go on in your building. That's going to be very important. They need to know what kind of things you're having to deal with.
Mhm.
I
All
don't think
right.
there's anything wrong with getting them up to speed.
All right, let's go back to our legal basis. Let's go back to case study 2, the letter from the superintendent. Let's think back. What was the legal case that's the biggest case about school financing, obviously in North Carolina, but it's also the biggest case nationally, the Leandro case. Leandro.
Mhm.
Leandro. All right, we remember our Leandro case. They said, we're paying you for a basic education. Whatever we give you, that's what it is. You can't move the money around. You can't take it from one and give it to the other. The money has to follow the kid. All right, we remember Leandro. All right. Would it be legal then if the state sent you the money to pay for a kindergarten assistant? Would it be okay for you to move them into the fourth grade for a half a day legally? Think about it now. According to what Leandro said, what the finding in the Leandro case, could you move that was allotted for these children? Could you give it to some other kid? Take it from them and give it to somebody else according to the Leandro decision? Absolutely not. And you need to be able to tell your teachers, look, Leandro is how we work. That means ever how we get the money, that's how we have to spend the money. And we can't break the law by taking money that was allotted for K2 and giving it to 3-5. Even within the same building, remember the money has to track to the kids that the state sent it for. We can't move it to another school, but we can't even move it within our own building. The money follows the kid. That's Leandro. That should be if when somebody says, "What is Leandro all about?" The money follows the kid. That's what Leandro is about. Whether it's a little or a lot, it follows the kid. You can't manipulate state money. You can't take what was intended for kindergarten and give it to fourth grade. That's that. But now, as Dr. Maraglia said, when the teachers in 3-5, when budgets started getting tight, a lot of the teacher assistants around the state in 3-5 were locally paid.
Mm-hmm.
Remember your funding sources, federal, state, local, and then school, candy sales, car washes. But a lot of the assistants in 3-5 were paid in grades 3 through 5 were paid for by the local. When local budgets started getting tight, what did they cut? They cut the assistants. That's one of the first things they cut
Mm-hmm.
in grades 3 through 5 was the teacher assistants. All right, now what you have to be able to say to your teachers is there's no funding for assistants in 3-5, but you got these over here and they're funded to be over there. And if we move them, we'll be out of, we'll be we're breaking the law. We'll be out of compliance. I want to think it was 1990 or 91. We had an issue with K2 teacher assistants driving the bus. They were pulled out of the K2 classroom because we had driver shortages to drive school buses. And was that legal? No, it was not legal because they were funded to be in those rooms and we pulled them out. They missed like 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon to drive the bus. And the state wanted their money back. And we had to pay it back. That is correct. We had to pay it back. So don't think that people won't be watching this or following this, or you think, well, I'll do it in my building and nobody will know. So my story on that, nobody will know if we're breaking the law. I don't know if I've told this story yet this semester or not. So when you go around the curve on 40 in Raleigh and head toward Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach, where Dr. Maraglia is tonight, the about halfway between Raleigh and Wilmington is Highway 42, and it takes you directly east across the state to Topsail Beach. Well, between Interstate 40 and Topsail Beach, I mean, it's so far out in the wilderness, even your GPS just sets and spins. It looks like you're just riding out in the woods. It's just spinning. The only thing you see out there is Jesus saves and stay off meth. Just even the convenience stores have closed. It's so far out in the woods. I mean, this place is. I went out there and they were working on the road, and I had to drive up a man's driveway and through the backside of his carport to get to the school building. I mean, I thought I was going to have an expedition to find this place. Now that's important to the story in that the third grade teachers beat the principal up over the the class sizes because the Title One teacher just had 12 in her room and they had 30, and they talked the principal into dividing all the rest of the kids out so they didn't have near as many and putting non-Title One kids in the Title One teacher's room. I think I've told this story before. You don't misspend federal money but one time, so I had to go back 2 weeks later and meet the new principal because that one got fired for misspending the federal money by putting non Title One kids in a federal program and misspending federal money. But there's two things that are important. The whole idea about it was out in the wilderness, and it was. That's not hyperbole. Is what are the chances that when I went that day to see him the first time and I had to wait an hour because they were getting a Title One audit? What was the probability that they just came randomly and did an audit at that school? Hell, you couldn't find it with a GPS, but they were there. So who called them and said there's a violation here? The Title One teacher, because she went from having 12 in her class to 28 or 27. She had 15. She had more non-Title One kids than she had Title One. So if you take the kindergarten teacher's assistant even an hour a day, what's she likely to pick up the phone and do? Call DPI and say they're taking my that teacher assistant that you allotted that the state's paying. They're taking my teacher assistant away from me. So don't think that even inside your building you can get away with something like that. The person that's harmed and knows that they're harmed and know that the law is on their side is going to pick up the phone. Everybody carries one around in their pocket now. They're going to make the call. So you better know that you can't just do this egalitarian, well, we'll just divide it all up. No, if somebody else is paying for it, then you better spend it just like they intended. That's the thing. I know sometimes you get killed on the TWC over that, but again, you have to have that collaborative conversation with your faculty. And as Dr. Maraglia said, they need to understand the law, or that the law has changed, or this is the law, and that we're not going to break the law. Now that won't make them any more reasonable, but at least you've made the attempt.
I was just going to say that doesn't mean they're not going to be mad.
Exactly.
They're going to still be mad.
Yeah. All right. The school environment is clean and well maintained. Um, I think that's important. Is some school systems, some districts, the principal hires and fires the custodian. Some you do not, and that's a problem in the ones that you do not. And even if you've got a custodial director for your district, some districts even take that a step further and do private contractors that do the cleaning. That they take the people that used to work for them, declare them independent contractors, so they won't have to pay their insurance and benefits. You need to figure out how your custodial works in your district and at your building. Do you hire and fire them? Do you supervise and evaluate them? But you need to keep your place clean, adequate space to work productively. The physical environment of classroom supports teaching and learning. The reliability and speed of internet connections are sufficient to support instructional practices. Again, if you have any capital money, you would want to put it toward those areas. So this is how you're going to be evaluated by your teachers on the TWC over facilities and resources. Anybody have any questions or points that they would like to add? All right. So let's look at we've already gone over the inventory, the physical environment. I want us to look quickly at it again. Make sure that you're running this every 2 weeks. You got to document this in writing every 2 weeks. That you have checked off on all these things about your building inside and out, your parking lots, all of those things, your safety kits, your chemical storage, all these things. I went over to Garinger High School. I was over there supervising, and I noticed they had put some of those moving panels, just panels in the back of the cafeteria, and I thought that looks like a fire hazard to me. I went back there and looked, and the custodians just behind these panels out in the middle of the cafeteria floor put all their cleaning supplies and chemicals because they didn't want to have to walk all the way back to the cleaning closet. They were just sitting there on the floor. Most of it flammable, highly flammable, sitting right there on the cafeteria floor. People ate. So don't think that people will automatically. You got to look. You got to make sure. that
And that's a
people,
big one. That's also one in classrooms too. Like your teachers will have cleaning products in their classrooms,
yeah.
and you got to watch for that one. And I appreciate them wanting to be clean, and especially since we've had a pandemic and things like that, and they're trying to be aware of the germs, but that will get you in a heartbeat.
Well, somebody had to go home over the cleaning supplies in the cafeteria. It unfortunately became known. It's one of them things where, we couldn't contain it. And then, oh, these kids, this is where kids eat, and, all this danger. And those things are supposed to be under lock and key, and they're not even supposed to be stored on the floor. They're supposed to be up on the shelf and all that stuff. And they were just sitting out in the open in the cafeteria. Uh, you just can't do stuff like that. So make sure you go over your inventory every 2 weeks. And again, you understand the law. You can delegate the activity, but not the responsibility. You can tell somebody like the custodian, make sure you do this every 2 weeks, but if it doesn't get done, the doorknob's broke, the gunman comes, goes in the room and shoots every kid in the room like happened, then that'd be on you. So I just wouldn't send the custodian. I'd at least send an assistant principal with the custodian twice a month. It'd be just like a regular date that they would go out, or you with them, or when you're an AP, make sure that gets done. Don't just tell the custodian to do it because they won't. They'll do it a time or
One
two till they realize nobody's watching, and then they won't.
one of the hardest things for me transitioning from the again I call it the country to Durham and Wake County was
Right.
no refrigerator, no microwave. You can't hang anything from
Hmm.
the ceiling. Can't put anything on the door. That was because that's what I was used to. I had a refrigerator, I had a toaster oven, I had a microwave,
Yeah.
a
We,
coffee
we had an
maker.
easy bake oven. We were cooking.
Well,
I know.
Tamika, you just took the words out of my mouth because I was going to talk about that. And when the fire marshal comes in, and being aware of what the fire marshal is going to be looking for, because again, in a Montessori school, we did have a lot of different appliances and
Hmm.
things in all of our classrooms,
Mhm.
because I had classrooms where children were preparing lunch every day for the classroom. That is part of what we do. And the fire marshal, he figured that out and he worked with us, but we still had to make sure that we were using the proper kind of extension cord, with a surge protector and things like that. They still had to be handled in an appropriate manner. And then another thing we had to deal with was in trying to make our classrooms the beautiful environment that the Montessori philosophy calls for, with curtains and pillows and other things that we had in the classroom, making sure that we had them treated with fire retardant
Mm.
materials, so that was not a safety hazard. So not only do you have your assessment that you're doing every 2 weeks, but you want to know, when that fire inspector comes in, what's he going to be looking for? What do I need to be looking for to make sure that we are in compliance there? Because you don't want to get written up by the fire marshal either. That's a big hassle. So hanging stuff from the ceiling and the walls and all of that they have really clamped down on that over the last few years, and making sure that schools are as safe as they can be. And you need to be aware of those types of things.
Yeah. And you know, I like these dollies that they have now where all the laptops or the Chromebooks fit in so that you don't have a million wires.
Mm-hmm.
All those are supposed to be tied up. All that stuff is very important. We were getting ready to open the high school. I was high school principal in Charlotte. We were getting ready to open up, and for whatever reason, I don't know if Dr. Miraglia remembers this. Some reason, I'm trying to think what happened that year. Our food deliveries didn't show up till like the day before school, and all the cardboard boxes were still piled outside the school. And the fire marshal came. We couldn't open school till we got all the. We had to haul the cardboard boxes off before we could open school the next day. That's what we were doing the night before school. And so, I mean, but it was a fire hazard when you've got a million boxes as high as a two-story building piled up outside, I'd say that's a fire hazard. Some kid in high school lighted on fire. And so, all that stuff you do not want to get written up. I mean, and I don't know what it costs elsewhere in Charlotte. The fines start at $500. So you do not want to get those. Those are not good.
And
All
then
right.
you also get parent phone calls too
Oh
because they'll
God.
say it's unsightly. I had parents complaining because my grass didn't get cut in the summertime, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get out there and cut the grass. The district handles that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, but again, it's a cultural thing. I mean, somewhere in my archives, I've got a picture of me when I was in the western part of the state shoveling snow on the sidewalks. We had the buildings where all of them didn't have an interior hallway. They were like Motel 6 design, out shoveling snow. But also in that district, back then I had hair more than on my face. When the lunchroom lady was out, I put on a hairnet and served lunch. I drove the bus when the bus driver was out. Um, and part of that is what local resources do you have? When you're in Charlotte, you got people to do all that. But again, if they don't get it done, you have to. You get kind of used to the comfortable life in the big
You
districts.
do.
When you're out in the woods, you got to do it yourself.
And
Which,
I am learning that this year because I came from a district that we had everything, and now I'm in
Mhm,
a charter school and we don't have custodians. So when that kid pukes in the hallway,
mhm.
that's us cleaning it up. So, yes, you are going to find yourself doing things you may never have expected, just depending on what resources you have in
Yeah.
your building.
But it's up to you to make sure that you maintain that safe facility, that safe environment, that your facilities and resources are in line. Yes, it'll be up to you. But then that doesn't mean you can't call and yell and scream at somebody on the other end of the line. But you got just like the night before. I mean, all the maintenance work, the custodian, I mean the the guys on the truck, they all went home at 5, and we had to clean it up that night. We had to haul all that off at night to get that out. I mean, we had to have school the next day. And the fire marshal showed up at 6 the next morning and did the occupancy. I mean, you have to do what you have to do. All right, so let's look at our PowerPoint for the evening. Again, this is Dr. Griffin Jordan that made this. I always try to make sure I credit the people's work. All right, managing school facilities. Uh, all right. So, how do you plan? Occupant health and safety, implementation and evaluation, capital planning, training and managing staff, learning environment, stakeholder needs and vision. All these are what go into school facilities maintenance planning. All right. Uh, okay. Schedule drills and inspections. How often do you have to have a fire drill?
Once a month.
All right. How often do you have to do your safety building inspection? Go for dose twice a month, every 2 weeks, and you have to document it. So your fire drills are once a month, your safety inspections are twice a month, and they have to be written and documented. You have a school improvement team, make sure that all this stuff goes through them. You have a critical incident response team in Safe School. Make sure, again, drills and biweekly inspections. Um, and then renovations and updates. We won't talk about those. We do that at the doctoral level. I teach facilities. I'm teaching it this weekend in Goldsboro. We do renovations, updates, and we do space and construction and building. You do that at the doctoral level. At this level, you just make sure you've got these spaces in your building for these people. We won't talk about doing renovations or new building construction. That's at a different level. The school principal's not involved in that. That's in your superintendent training. Um, One of the things that we talked about earlier, culture, rigor, technology, scheduling, that's exactly what we've talked about. making sure that we know what we need. We have these collaborative conversations about our culture. We're not going to use the copy machine, how we use our technology. Again, back to our scheduling, all those things. We go over the TWC and make sure we know what's important. And so we've already talked about those pieces. Uh, you need continuous feedback from staff and students. Look at your data. Outdoor learning spaces. I would not, in today's world, I hate to say this, I'll stop my share again. Other than playgrounds, I would not, and this sounds crazy, but we used to try to do a lot of experiential learning outdoors, have outdoor labs, outdoor facilities. I would not do any of that stuff anymore. The only time I'd let a kid outside is go to the playground. Um, it's just so expensive, time consuming, upkeep, the safety, the danger. I mean, you take a kid out and he gets bit by a spider or an ant or something or another. Nowadays, that's the end of the world. You have to, we try to make playgrounds as safe as we can, but even then we get lawsuits over them. Most every school district is in a lawsuit over a playground accident all the time. You don't want to extend that to the classroom environment. The only thing that I would do, we built little sheds on the outside of the new building when I was an elementary principal to have a little shedded area for the sand and water table so we could put it up. But it was not, it was an extension of the classroom. It was not out somewhere. Um, the liability is just too great now. I would not be doing outdoor spaces other than for that. Um, but I was on a trip fairly recently and saw a new safe playground design. I know that's again crazy. There's no such thing as a safe, I mean, if you fall off of something, you hit the ground. I mean, that's gravity. But they've made them as safe as they can. I guess I don't think it really is going to fix that many childhood injuries. My assessment was it's not going. Kids are not too tough nowadays. I don't think it's going to cut down on the injuries, but I think that you may be able to avoid some lawsuits where you can go to court and argue that you did your due diligence as much as you could do to keep kids safe. That when the kid fell off the slide or the swing or the monkey bars, that gravity doesn't discriminate. I mean, it gets us all. And so, I mean, I guess the idea of this playground was, can we could design something that would hold up in court that we did the best that we could do. And so that's it. But other than that, other than playground, which you've got to have, I would not do anything else other outside because of the liability. Not that kids wouldn't appreciate it and not that it's a good thing. It's just too much of a liability. All right. Again, your facilities. We talked about this earlier, your budget. I mean, where are you going to get money? Where are you going to get money for your facilities? Again, just like teacher assistants, that's part of this facilities. I know it sounds crazy, but you remember it's on the TWC, that instructional support. So we consider that to be facilities. But again, who's paying for it? Is there is there a DPI or state public? Is there an allotment for it? If again, if the state's paying for it, you can't use it on your in a local context. You can't move it from where they intended. We've already talked about that. And so, what money do we have in our facility for these things? Who pays for copy machines, by the way? I'll stop it again. I'll stop the share again. Who pays for copy machines?
I
And
have
who
no
pays,
idea,
pardon?
but what I do know is at my school they waste a lot of paper, just waste paper. I asked, why do y'all make so many copies? They're wasting paper to me. So
Well,
I don't know, and I'm at a charter school, so I don't know who pays for it.
well, charter school pays for everything. But the state doesn't have an allotment anymore for copy machines. You do not get money for the local has to pay for the machine, and the local now a lot of school districts the school district pays for the machine, but then who has to pay for the paper? The school has to pay for the paper. Yep. The school has to, the district pays, may lease the machine, but the school has to pay for the paper. That's the best deal you get. Some places the school has to pay both. Some districts there is no allotment of any kind for copiers
And
to
it's
try to
also going to be
discourage the use.
your
Yeah.
toner and your ink
Yep.
and all of that.
And
And
your
same thing
maintenance.
with your printers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you've got a teacher, I know I've been in a situation where we were having to really monitor what was going on in the classrooms because the teachers would try to print out, a class set on their printer, which is a
Hmm.
lot more expensive than doing it on the copy machine. So, you got to be mindful of that kind of stuff.
Yep. It not only harms instruction, it's expensive.
Very.
It gets expensive. And if you're in a district where you have to pay for your paper and the machine,
And
it gets, but even outside the money, it's so harmful to how you should be teaching kids. It's just a crutch.
Tamika, we have in my charter school, you can't make color copies. If you need a color copy, you have to get permission from the head of school, and you have to have a pretty good reason for that. And it's
Yeah,
just simply because we have to pay for everything, and we're just trying to be mindful of that.
it's like that at my school too. But to watch these folks use the amount of paper that they use, it
Yep.
tears my nerves up. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. All right. Funding to manage school facilities in North Carolina, the state pays about 58%, the federal about 20, and the local about 21. And so you can see the breakdown of where you get your money for your facilities. Um, and so that's what we're talking about again. Going back again, where is the money coming from for that thing? And that's what it has to continue to do. If these resources that they send for Title One kids, the books, the materials, the supplies, and they do, can you give them to your Reg Ed kids that aren't Title One? No. If the state funds you a K2 teacher assistant, can you move them to 3.5? No, because they tell you how you have to spend that money or that resource that they give you. The money that it has to track with what they sent it for. Now, locally, you say, well, this is paid for locally. I can use it any way I want to. No, you can't. Used to be in Charlotte, you had two big thick notebooks in your office as a principal, and they were the big 8-inch notebooks, and one of them was full as it could get, and the color of the paper was yellow, and then you had one, and the color of the paper in it was blue. All right, and one of them was law, the blue one was law, and the yellow one was policy, local board policy. So local board policy governs the spending of local money. So don't think because this is paid for locally, I, as the building principal, can spend it any way I want to. You cannot. There'll be a policy that says how that money can be spent. They're all online now. But if we printed them out like we used to, you need two men to carry that thing around. It was so big and heavy. There's a policy on every local dollar will have a policy. You need to make sure that you're within your policy on how you can use that resource. You get this. That's what I'm talking about. The copy machine. All right. They allot you a copy machine, but there's a policy on its use. And in terms of who pays for the toner, who pays for the ink, who pays for the paper. There may be even a policy on that you're supposed to limit the number of copies per month, regardless, or by teacher. You better know the policy on all this stuff as well. So that whole slide was about federal money comes. All right, what does federal pay for? Make sure that we're only using it for what they said. State money comes, again, only use it for what they said. Local money, make sure that we know what the policy is locally behind that. You say, well, principals don't have a lot of authority or autonomy. No, you don't. Not when it comes to law and policy. Those are things that it's easy to prove that you did or you didn't. And we know what happens when you do the wrong thing. So that was what was important on that slide. Okay, we know how schools are funded on ADM. This is a particular one that shows that money is declining to traditional public schools, and that not that it's a bad thing, but that it's going to charter schools because the money comes with the kids. That's what you've got to understand is when you enroll a kid, the money comes for that kid. It's got to stay with that kid. Now, you only get it for a month. Next month, if he's there, you get money for him in the next. And so ADM, again, this reinforces the idea or the understanding. And I hear this all the time. Well, that kid went to charter school for 2 weeks and they got all the money. Now we have to. No, they didn't. They got the first month's money, for half of it. Remember, everybody sends the money 1 month at a time after the first month. And any days that kid missed, you don't get paid for that day. So if he stayed with you, charter school 2 weeks, and then came to you, then they only got the 2 weeks of the money. But the idea here is to understand again that part of that graphic, the money follows the kid. That's what Leandro is about. Money follows children, and you have to use it as intended. It's not just the overall. I mean, it trickles down to facilities, resources, computers. It trickles down to everything. The money follows the kid, and you must spend it how it is intended, whether it be federal, state, or even local has policy behind it. You must know when you're going to spend a dollar or use a resource. Again, this is my building. I'm moving this teacher assistant over to cover 3.5 for an hour a day. No, you're not. You when you get caught, don't act like you didn't know that was illegal when
So
they
may I
send
ask a
you home.
question?
Yeah.
So so our so our teacher assistants will sub and they'll get paid for it.
I hope that that's a locally paid sub or TA. But yeah, I know that's going on a lot.
Hmm.
But you know, if that's a state paid one, then that's not going to go well. If that local ones they're doing that with, they're letting them sub because of the shortage. They've got to, and they may have a waiver in Raleigh for to do that with the state, but you'd have to have a waiver to do that. You can't just decide that you want to do that. Um, I I didn't know that anybody since the pandemic was over was able to do that on a state paid one. I know during the pandemic they did. They had people off the street in rooms during the pandemic, but but unless it's an emergency situation that they've gotten some kind of a waiver, you can't do that with a state paid one, not legally. But I know it's going on. That started during the pandemic. It was pretty common. We were letting people double dip in a lot of things back then, especially bus drivers. We had a lot of people double dipping. But again, you better make sure and don't assume because you had it this year that you'll get it next year, or that because somebody else was doing it and you inherit it that it's going to be okay for you to do it. That's one of those things you better ask about. Budgeting is about setting priorities based on needs. Counting is tracking the money. Reporting is the outcome of what you have to do. Without if you don't do the reporting, then DPI won't or the other nobody will send you the money. So the whole idea is, one of the things that I get from time to time is we talk about budgeting, and they'll send the account sheet. No, that's after the fact. Accounting is how you spent the money. Budgeting is how you plan to spend it. What are your priorities? What are your priorities? Remember, you got to cover the first month. Your school district has to cover the first month, and then you start getting reimbursed on a monthly basis. But but budgeting is about priorities. What do you need? What are your priorities? Accounting is how did we spend it? Did we spend it as intended? And then reporting is what you have to do in order to get the next allotment of money the next month. Ken Gaddis explained it to me this way. He worked for DPI when I was in Charlotte. He said, "We're trading you money for data. It's a trade. We're in this compact or partnership. You collect data for a month, and you give us that data, and we give you money. We reimburse you your costs, minus your absenteeism based on your enrollment. You collect data for another month, you give us that data, we pay you for it. Their DPI looks at it as an arrangement where they're paying you for your data. That's that reporting, PMR Principals Monthly Report, School Activity Report. You're giving them data. Power School, now Infinite Campus. You're giving them data, they give you money. Now, as Ken would say from time to time, if we don't get our data, we're just going to flip the switch. That means you don't get your money. And see how that goes. And so the whole idea here is budgeting is how you plan to spend your money, what you think are the priorities, what needs you have. And again, this should be a conversation with your faculty, a collaborative conversation that works through the school improvement team. And these should be the priorities in your school improvement plan. So make sure you understand. Accounting is keeping up with how you spent the money. Again, the financial secretary has nothing to do with budgeting. She has to do with how you spend it and we track it. And then understanding the reporting piece is how we get money to replenish what we spent so we have money to pay for the next month of school. That's the way the system works in the modified accrual accounting system. All right. And I think that's pretty much all I want to do. All right. Fundraising. Again, you can delegate the activity, but not the responsibility. You are responsible if fundraising goes bad. So do not compete with local businesses or child nutrition. Remember, drink machines, candy, all that stuff, got to stay off till out lunch. No fundraising. Don't use your teachers during instructional time. The state pays your teachers. And then it's about 100 to 1 swap. For every $100 the state spends, you raise about $1 having them do fundraisers. Do not do fundraisers during instructional time. They're being paid by the state to do something else, which is teach children. Be involved with PTSA fundraising. Again, if they run off with it, they'll get you for failure to maintain fiscal control. If somebody embezzles the PTA funds, which happens every day, and then all money must be receipted and deposited the same day. And that's the end of that. I want to rant one more time about fundraising. It's a necessary evil, but don't think. I have students all the time who say, we don't have to worry about that. We just turned over to our PTA. Well, you're an idiot because they've got your job and your house in their hand. And if they make off with it, you're going to lose your job. Failure to maintain fiscal control. You must keep up with fundraising. You can delegate the activity, not the responsibility. So make sure you understand that about fundraising. Don't compete against your food service. If they catch you, the feds will fine you. They will fine you if they catch you competing with food with the hot lunch program because that's federally funded. Don't compete with them. Try to stay out of any kind of fundraisers on your campus. Try to do things that are external, ball games, Eastern North Carolina, they used to have donkey basketball games. Western North Carolina, they used to have womanless weddings. I think people have forgotten that. They've gotten so hard right now. But they used to have men dress up as women. It was hilarious. They don't do that anymore. We've gone back in time. I mean, when I was a kid, they did that all the time. Nobody thought anything about it. It wasn't about transgender. It was hilarious. Just like when Barney wore a dress on Andy Griffin. That used to be a thing out in the country. People thought that was hilarious. Not anymore. They've lost their sense of humor. But, barbecues, different things to raise money that you can do. And my last rant is I don't think anybody's doing it anymore, but it used to be really popular, 50, 60 years ago when I was in school. Ball games like faculty, student ball games and those kinds of things. But the injury and the liability on that stuff, it's tough to raise money now. It's tough to raise money. I know the wealthier places like where I live, Lake Norman with that bunch, they just send a note home to send a check, at Cornelius Elementary. They just send $500 and they're done with it for the year. They do. The parents send $500.
It's crazy because Dr. Lamb, I got dinged twice on both of those things that you're talking about. I got dinged for the PTA. Our tennis coach, this was at another school, maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. The tennis coach got in trouble, so they ended up auditing all of us,
Yeah,
all the coaches, and I got dinged because we did ours through the PTA, and the PTA doesn't require a receipt book.
right.
So, no matter the fact that our AD said we just turned it in to her at the end of the week, we as coaches still got in trouble because it didn't matter. We should have had our own receipt book, they said, and just
Daily.
PTA doesn't.
You got to have a receipt and it has to be deposited daily, not weekly. And you
Yeah,
have to have a receipt book. And yes, they will ding you.
they
That's just like you have to have a system just like at a ball game where you're giving out tickets so that you can do reconciliation, even on tickets at a ball game. Can you imagine how hard that is in Charlotte, in a place where you have thousands of people come to watch a ball game on Friday night? You have to do a reconciliation. Yes.
And then I taught foods for a long time. And when I got into the honors and more of the pro start and culinary, those kids have to run an actual store and restaurant. Well, the
Yeah.
cafeteria people did not like that.
Oh no.
And which we didn't understand because if it was in our curriculum,
Yeah.
well, we got dinged because what the feds or whoever said was
Yep.
we had to do it before school, either early in the morning, get there before, or do it after school when like the cafeteria people is not available.
Yeah. So when I was principal at Olympic High School, we had a culinary, and I mean, we had a full-blown culinary deal.
Yeah.
And so what we came to an accommodation while I was principal there is that we would do one lunch meal service a month. And the rest of them had to be like on Friday. We did Friday afternoon, the pregame and postgame. We did meals for at the ball game on Friday nights. The faculty and other people, and then we fed the kids later on. The athletes after. So we began to utilize ours more on. So they got weekly training on Friday night football or Friday night when we had basketball, 4 games, one site. We ran hours after school for those activities, and then once a month, they would let us. We agreed that we would only do after school, but once a month we did like the first Monday of every month where we did a lunch service, and the faculty could go or students could go for that. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. We got dinged too. And so we started, instead of taking kids like over to the local steakhouse, we started doing it through our culinary, the pregame meal, and doing
Yeah.
so that they got an opportunity. And then,
Yeah.
our football players learned to actually eat indoors with a knife and fork, uh, which was a
Right.
good thing too.
Right.
That's a pretty rough bunch. And so, yes, that's what we're talking about. You can't compete. And Courtney's exactly right. And they will, if you don't receipt everything and turn the money in every day, now, yes, they will ding you. It will not go well for you. So you got to make sure that you follow those rules and don't just, again, the person that said, I just turned into me once a week, you don't have to see it. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. This is all in state law. We went over that during that time. You saw the local statutes and the state law that all money will be receipted every day. Every day. No money taken home, no money left at school. Everything will be. I mean, we had to have the policeman take our head ticket taker to the bank after the ball game on Friday night when when the reconciliation was done. About midnight, the policeman would take her to the bank to make the deposit. Yeah, they're serious about this stuff. And again, the money's the easiest stuff to get caught on. It's the easiest stuff to get caught on. Um, So that's that. All right. I'm looking forward to your case studies next week. Again, they're a little involved, but don't go down don't get distracted by the stuff that we've thrown in there to kind of to throw you off. Um, and it's pretty straightforward what's going on there. And I know that y'all know that what the law is and what you should and shouldn't be doing. But that this is a good test to put together all the things that you have learned this semester. We're really looking forward to it. Again, y'all are doing a great job on your discussion boards. I read them all. I know Dr. Maraglia does in comments. Your evidence work's coming along, so make sure you get on that. Before we go tonight, I know I'm a couple minutes, well, not more, I'm more than a couple minutes over. Let me share my screen right quick. And let's look at our weekly schedule as we always do on the exit every week. So let me pull our weekly schedule up. All right. So we're all the way into November now. November 5th, we did our managing facilities, accounting, budgeting, and reporting. And you do your walkthrough assessment and fundraising. I made sure we talked about both of those tonight. All right. Next time we're together is for case study 4. And then on week 13, we will hit um, managing resources, auxiliary services, financial management principles. And then we will do Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We have sexual harassment. And then on Wednesday, December the 3rd, we have the wrap up or makeup. Now, the reason I got to this, Dr. Maraglia asked me a question this week. She said, are we really going to make them go to school the Wednesday before Thanksgiving? And I said, every year about this time when we get to November, I'll let y'all decide. Do y'all want to come the Wednesday before Thanksgiving or do you want to go that makeup day in December? That would be up to you.
All of our work is still due by the 13th of December, right?
Yeah, but
Or
you
when is
don't.
the?
Yeah, you
Oh,
got
okay.
you got until the end of the second week in December to turn your work in. But we can finish class the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, or we can finish it the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. We can take that Wednesday off and do the last weekend, the last Wednesday, the first week of December, which is the last Wednesday of the semester. We can do that, or we can finish up the day before Thanksgiving. It's up to y'all.
I would prefer the week after, just in case if I got some like last minute questions, and also I'll be
Okay.
driving.
Okay. So does everybody, would it be okay for everybody if we take the Wednesday before Thanksgiving off and finish the first week in December? That'd be good for everybody. So that means everybody gets the whole week of Thanksgiving off. Great day.
Yeah.
If I don't, I got to work. If I don't work, I get lazy. But that sounds good to me. I can go for that, and I'll put that in writing to remind everybody that we will not meet the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That we will take our makeup option, which was already in the schedule, and we'll do our makeup. We'll do that. We'll do that last week, the first Wednesday in December. Then that sounds good to me. A lot of people travel the day before Thanksgiving. I know, so we always give you that option every year. So. Sometimes folks exercise it, and sometimes people say, "We tired of seeing y'all. Can we get done as quick as possible?" That's usually when I'm just by myself. All right. We will see you next week for case study 4. I'll make the adjustment to the weekly schedule and send the notice out to everybody. And if there's something wrong with discussion boards, I'll fix those as well. All right. It's good to see everybody tonight. Thank you.
Good
Everybody,
night.
everybody be safe. We'll see you next week.